welcome to the Triple Takeover Toycast, a new regular podcast about Transformers and occasionally other vintage and related toy lines from the 80s and 90s. This is episode 1, and your hosts are Transformers toy writer and photographer Liam from Toybox Soapbox.
Hello.
We've got Sixo, also a toy writer, photographer, and also YouTuber.
Hello.
And there's myself, M.A.S.K from Transformers Square One. We're kicking off this series of podcasts by discussing our favourite gimmicks, or just all gimmicks from the Transformers toy line. But first of all, lads, how are you doing?
Good, thanks. I'm all right here.
Yeah, very good, very good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. You had a good week?
Not too bad here. It's obviously still it's lockdown, isn't it? So there's not really too much going on, generally speaking. But yeah, otherwise it's been all right.
Yeah, same here. It's pretty much just walking to work, getting through work, walking home from work.
You see, I work from home, so my walking is slightly limited in that regard. But...
Shuffled to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Roll out of bed to work.
I've been being shaken up all week by earthquakes, 3 to 4 magnitude, something like 2,000 earthquakes now in the last week here in Iceland. Now they're telling us there's going to be a volcanic eruption, but
Wow.
This afternoon they were telling us actually it's not going to be that big of a deal, and maybe just a couple of fissures here and there, a couple of rocks might pop up, might be some gas.
Just a couple of things like that, you know?
Yeah.
Just completely normal.
Yeah, no, there was something on the news here actually. They said last year we were dealing with COVID, this year it's earthquakes and volcanoes, and there was just a shot of 2022 March with the ship from Independence Day just hovering over it. And so
Nice.
That's pretty much all that's left.
I was going to say, like, are we going to have to start addressing mail to Maz in New Pompeii? It's going to end up like.
Well, you know, if we get a big enough earthquake or volcano, that's pretty much the island split in half.
How much mail do you send him, Liam?
Well, nothing yet, but if he lived in New Pompeii, I'd send loads.
Crisps.
Theoretical
they're already sending me crisps.
Send crisps.
Yeah.
Just boxes of Frazzles.
So, Transformers Gimmicks. We actually posted something on Twitter just before recording this episode where we asked a bunch of people about Transformers Gimmicks, and I'm sure they've probably mentioned loads that we hadn't thought of, but Sixo, why don't we start with you telling us what your favourite Transformers gimmick has been?
Sure thing. Well, I mean, obviously there are loads, and it's very hard to pick one. I think what was interesting for me reading the Twitter thread particularly was actually just so many that I'd completely forgotten about, you know, and just immediately kind of reading through them. Like someone mentioned laser rods from Generation 2, and I was, straight away I was like, oh my God, that's such a good suggestion, because it is really, really cool. I wouldn't say personally it's my favourite, do you know what I mean? But it just kind of reminded me, particularly from that era of toys, just how many great gimmicks there are. I think for me, though, it's Headmasters. I think Headmasters, generally speaking, are my favourite.
And do you have a particular favourite Headmaster? Like, did you have loads of them as a kid, or did you come into them as an adult, start discovering them when you came back to collecting?
Yeah, I definitely had them as a kid. Like, so for me, the 1987 lot are like the big ones. Do you know what I mean? That's definitely my favourite year of Headmasters. I'd actually say to the point where 1987 for me, though, particularly the Autobots, I do love the Decepticon ones as well, but particularly the Autobots, I just think that was done so well that it surpasses anything that's been done in terms of Headmasters, you know, in the years since. Certainly, like, even better than 1988, which was still good, but, you know, I particularly love the 87 year. And then obviously it's a gimmick that's been redone, you know, with Titan's Return and stuff like that since, but I just kind of feel like it's never been done quite as well as that original year when it was new. And I'm sure there's a bit of, you know, nostalgia tinted glasses with that. You know, no doubt that people listening to it that, you know, maybe grew up after Generation 1 might be like, oh yeah, of course. But I think there's just something so satisfying about them. I can't really explain it. There's just the execution, the engineering, everything. I just think it's absolutely spot on with those original toys. But beyond that, you know, just the concept of robots with little men that turn into their heads, but then they also can like ride in the vehicles and all of that kind of clobber. I just think it's just flawless.
It's quite a callback to... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think some of that with the 87 toys is because it's the first year where Hasbro were really kind of free to get as creative as they want? Because before that, they're still sort of shackled to Diaclone, and then you've got the movie toys where they're doing something new for the first time.
Yeah.
And then after that, it really becomes their toy line, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
The thing is, that whole Headmasters, Target Master era is quite inspired by Diaclone in a way. It's like it's a callback to that with pilots that are integral to the functioning of the larger robot. And even though with Target Masters it's less so, because you don't need the Target Master to still enjoy the toy and have a solid robot mode and a vehicle mode. And actually, I think the original Takara concept boards for the Headmasters were not pitched as Headmasters. They were just pitched as another line of Transformers. So things like Hardhead and all these toys and the Decepticon ones, they were just pitched as, you know, like a transforming bat or a transforming wolf. And I remember
without the head gimmick.
Yeah, without the Headmaster gimmick at all. So you had the Ape Face board, which actually had a really cool US Air Force F-16 as the jet mode, and you had the Gorilla, and Snapdragon had like a dinosaur mode, and the SR-71 Blackbird, and of course there's the Stingray that wasn't made. I think it was in the Vault book that was first shown. Then and the same thing for the Target Masters. You know, the concept boards from those had 4 Decepticon jets, not the 3 that we actually got, but there was a 4th one as well that never got made. And there's no sign of any sort of Nebulon or Pilot or small companion in those. They're just pitched as another line of transforming jets and animals.
It's really interesting. You have to wonder when that gimmick came in then, because obviously a bit of a later down the line thing, that someone at some point went, little men. That's the secret here. Like, we need to get more little men on the case here. But you're right. It's interesting tying it back to Diaclone as well, because I suppose that's not how people tend to think of it. And I think actually, if the build of the toys was the same as what had come from Diaclone, you know, the hand-me-downs, maybe people would feel differently about it. Because you always get, don't you, those people that feel that 1987 was such a kind of split from everything that had come prior.
Yeah, there's like that line that's drawn, isn't there, by people?
Yeah.
And it's funny when you talk about it, because it is, like you say, very, I don't know, like a homage, yeah, to Diaclone. But at the same time, the toys are so plasticky and big. It's just completely different from the sort of more small, fragile, diecast toys that came before.
Yeah, for me, I'll be honest, I know it's a bit of a hot take, I guess, but I prefer the later toys. Like, I prefer a 1987 toy over a 1984 toy. That's just me. And like, obviously, I love the 1984 stuff. I love the Diaclone stuff. But it's in terms of them being toys, I think actually the 87 stuff is superior, personally, just because it's, you know, a bit more durable and kind of has a bit more of a play pattern to it and whatever else. Whereas I think
they weren't all durable. I mean, Hardhead's chest flap is one that comes to mind immediately, and you know, there's the 1988.
That's
horrible as well.
Oh yeah, horrible is horrible.
Exactly.
Someone had to say it.
But I know what you mean. I actually came to appreciate the 1987 onward line more as an adult than I ever did as a kid. Even though I love those toys, and I think I probably spent more years playing with the later Headmasters and Target Masters that I had than the first few runs of toys, even though I remembered those more fondly. It's only as an adult that I started really getting into collecting all of 87, and I think 87 is actually probably the line that I am closest to having everything from now in my current collection.
I think...
What are you missing?
A vintage Fort Max and a 6-shot, and strangely Battle Trap.
I think I may have everything from 87.
This does not surprise me.
Nor me.
I'm just thinking now, like, I'm trying to think of something I don't have. There may be one or two, but you see, my parameters are different, because I don't have a vintage Fort Max. I have an Encore Fort Max, but that to me that's fine. That's box ticked. Whereas your parameters are different in that regard, because
in the end, I just I reached the age of 40 and midlife crisis kicked in, and I went and bought an Encore Fort Max as well. So that's the one in my collection now.
I think it's the way forward. Honestly, I think it's so the Encore release is so good. To me, I know that there is a distinction, obviously, between that and the vintage one, but why not? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's to have it new. Do you know what I mean? For such a good price now, still, and to have that toy, which is still one of the best Transformers toys of all time, I think. Not just because it's big, just because it's such a great toy. I just think it can't be beat.
No, I can't deny taking it out of the box for the first time. I was quite wowed, and this was at a period where I wasn't buying a lot of toys, and I'd actually had it since September, but I only opened it, I think it was January when I finally got to open it, and it was spectacular.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. You were slightly driving me a bit potty with not opening it because every time we spoke, and I was like, "Have you played with that Fort Max yet?" And you were like, "No, man, it's still in the box." And I'm like, "Dude, just crack it open."
So, which one is your favourite Headmaster of all of them? Is it Fort Max then?
I do. I guess it's a difficult one because I didn't have Fort Max as a kid, obviously. And actually, funny story about Fort Max, and I will come back to your question. But I remember thinking that who is Fort Max as a kid because I read the comics a lot as a child and the Marvel comics, and obviously he's a big character in that. And so I loved Fort Max as a character, but he was always a bit of an enigma in some ways. And then because he was never in any of the catalogs that we got in the UK or anything like that. So it was kind of like, who is this guy? Do you know what I mean? That they keep kind of featuring.
Well, unless you were Santiago Jones and entered a competition, a colouring competition, I think it was, and ended up in the newspaper for not winning it.
Did he become second place? He was second place? Yep. That's hilarious. Oh dear. Yeah, I do love that story. But yeah, no, so he was just kind of a bit of an enigma. But then some kid at school told us that they had a Fort Max toy. And we were all like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then he turned up with the head one day. I never ever. It's one of my.
We did get them eventually in the 90s in the UK. There were shops in, I think it was Great Yarmouth or something like that. They actually right? Grey market Fort Maxes. Yeah, there's a couple in the UK with UK price tags.
That's mad.
That were sold. I know Andy from Kapow had one. And of course we had the one in Hamleys, which was quite a famous one. That it was the colouring competition in Hamleys. But the sad part is that I was told that over the course of the competition, people were just nicking bits off it. This Fort Max that was on display. So eventually, I think the one was left was probably like one you'd find in an old kids collection now.
Someone nicked the head.
Well, and other things and everything else. But there will be people in the UK who did get a Fort Max here in the UK.
That's mad.
Well, I say here in the UK, but I'm not in the UK.
Yeah. But yeah, this kid at school, I remember distinctly him turning up with this, like, obviously fairly normal sized robot and flipping it over to become the head. And all of us, all the kids at school just being like, whoa! Do you know what I mean? It was and it's one of my childhood memories that is just so crystal clear. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, no, never had Fort Max as a kid. Love it as an adult. Is it a favourite? I mean, I have 3 versions of the thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's definitely up there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I don't know. Otherwise, I really love Brainstorm. I don't know, there's just something about the colour of that toy that I really love. He's definitely a favourite of mine. And Skullcruncher maybe as well, I think.
Yeah, good shout. Liam, you have a favourite Headmaster?
Yeah, it's probably Chrome Dome. As a kid, I had the 3 Autobot Headmasters, and the one I didn't have was Hardhead, so he was obviously the one I wanted the most. But another kid at school had it, and so I coveted it. And you know how you swap toys and stuff at playtime, and you play with each other. I always wanted Hardhead. Whereas I think if I'd have had him, I'd have coveted Chrome Dome because I think he was the best one.
Chrome Dome is pretty ace. It's a good toy.
Yeah, never saw a Fort Max.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't even remember seeing a lot of the very common toys in the UK. I think I was just had blinkers on when I used to go to the toy store, was only looking for a Thundercracker or only looking for Jazz or only looking for Ramjet, and just not seeing half of what was on the shelf or in Argos at the time, just looking for that one and being really disappointed in Argos when I thought I'd ordered a Jazz, and then this toy I'd never seen before in the cartoon, it came rolling down the conveyor belt. Later realised it was a smokescreen, which you can't find many G1 collectors who don't love smokescreen. No. But Chrome Dome. Chrome Dome is another one I came to appreciate as an adult when I had a really nice version of it. But I'd seen it in many used collections, and I always thought it was not great until I had a nice one.
Something about that it's a bit like Rekgar for me, and obviously that's a bit off topic, but those sorts of toys that just like I know I've told you this before, but I had a very kind of not necessarily beaten up, but just a bit shabby copy of Rekgar. And I was always a bit nonplussed by it. Do you know what I mean? It was always kind of like, eh. And then when I finally got at TFN a couple of years ago a completely mint and unstickered Rekgar, I was in love with it. It's just absolutely changed my opinion about that toy. And I think just
all jointed shoulders.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing for a G1 toy.
Yeah,
great, really good height, chunk.
Real, proper chunk.
Rubber tyres when rubber tyres were, going out of style. Go Liam.
Oh no, I was just going to go back to Chrome Dome and say I think they're all quite futuristic, aren't they? But with Chrome Dome, he feels more futuristic because he's got so much detail on his car mode. There's all these like little bits and bobs that makes him look a bit like the DeLorean in some ways. There's a lot of extra bits, whereas the others are all very smooth and sort of futuristic in style. But
it's true actually. Yeah, he's quite greebly. Is Chrome Dome in his way.
Super cool head sculpt too.
Very cool. Very, very cool indeed. But they're all good. They're all good. All those toys. And one thing I really appreciate about that lineup as well, particularly the Autobots, is how different the heights of them are. I really like that actually the ground guys are much taller, particularly Hardhead is massive, versus Brainstorm, who actually, comparatively is quite small, which is not something that you see in a lot of those sorts of lineups. Like I'm really trying to think now of like a line of toys, a subgroup of Transformers like that, where the sizes vary as much as the Headmasters, because I do think it's unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was also quite surprised how much bigger Chrome Dome was, especially than the others in robot mode. And like looking at the Decepticon ones, they're quite uniform as far as size goes.
Yeah, Weird Wolf is a bit smaller, isn't he? But otherwise, yeah.
I've never seen a toy look more ridiculous from the back than Weird Wolf. And it's very important how your toys look from the back.
Yeah. It's a hilarious toy. Weird Wolf is one actually that doesn't can have some problems. I think like loose joints and stuff like that. That's one that doesn't. It's not the most robust toy, certainly. It's one to be careful with.
It's really difficult to find in really good condition as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I've never seen one in the flesh.
It's a fun toy. Really, really
fun toy. It is a really nice looking toy. And it stands out as being the yellow one of the group as well, really nicely. I can't tell you how many Headmasters I remember the Space Bridges bought second hand, and they've just been advertised looking with nothing. But then you open up the flap, and the Headmaster's in the flap. It's riding the character, and whoever's selling it never thought to sort of go through the canopies.
They're in the cockpit?
Yeah, they're there. Yeah,
brilliant. They don't hear them rattling around in there? I mean...
I don't know, if you're not familiar with the toys, what would you imagine that was?
So I think part of the reason that I appreciate the original lot, the 1987 lot, over the 88 crew is because, look, as an adult, I love the 88 crew, and actually they're bigger than I thought they were going to be. Before I got them, I never had them as a kid, but before I got them, I kind of imagined that they were going to be significantly smaller, particularly being
Siren's he's big. Towers over the rest of them, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's the same size as the 87 toys, which is really weird to see, because you have this impression of them as, particularly because their little head dudes are so much smaller, as being tiny toys. They're Headmaster Juniors, but they're not that small. But it's all the additional little bits, isn't it? And I can just imagine all of that getting lost. And I like the kind of cohesiveness of the Gimmick with the original crew. I think the cockpits work better on the 87 lot generally, other than maybe like on Nightbeat and a few examples. Definitely on the Decepticons, the cockpits work better on the 87 lot versus the 88 crew.
I'll never forget the nostalgic hit of getting a nice, good condition ape face as an adult, and just seeing that dreamy, translucent green canopy. It just took me immediately back to being 7 years old and getting my first childhood ape face. And I had no idea who that character was. I was still watching Transformers the movie and the odd VHS of season 1 and 2. I'd never seen season 3. I'd never seen Rebirth. I wasn't reading the Marvel comics. And in fact, the day I bought Ape Face, I was bought a Marvel comic along with it, which I think since then I've realized is the Headmasters mini-series or something like that. But yeah, that canopy on Ape Face is just, it takes me straight back to 1987, like a smell would. It's insane.
I never had it as a kid, but there's a bit from the Marvel comic. It's the US storyline, but obviously it was reprinted in the UK as well, which is a very memorable Ape Face moment if you've not seen it. I think it's during the Underbase saga, and there's a bit where two sets of Decepticons go to battle with one another, because there's like various different factions of Decepticons in the comic and whatever else. It's kind of quite a complicated plot. But there's Ape Face ends up fighting Rampage of all people, and Rampage tears Ape Face's arm off. At which point Ape Face picks it up and beats Rampage with it, and it's one of those panels as a kid that you're just like, I don't know, it just sticks in your brain, I guess. Headmasters for me, definitely the big one, and I know it's been done obviously since, as I said, with Titan's return, and it's a bit kind of the Oprah Winfrey of headmasters, isn't it? Like, you're going to be a headmaster, and you're going to be a headmaster. Everybody's going to be a headmaster. It's but that was fun as well. Like, it's definitely cool, and I do love some of those new toys, like Scorponok at the moment. The Earthrise Scorponok, I'm in love with. I just think it's exceptional.
I mean, it took about 4 articles, but you did eventually get there with your top 10, didn't you? To tell us that Scorponok, after 15 honourable mentions, was your top 10.
It's called.
Oh wait, is it finished?
Yeah.
It's called showmanship, darlings.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, hopefully it was worth waiting for. But
toy looks incredible. Looks absolutely brilliant.
It's grand. It's really, really good.
It's a fantastic toy.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, the
really
vintage
something.
is a stunning toy. Having one of those for the first time a few years ago was quite amazing. And I remember seeing that toy in shops all the time and just thinking, I have no interest in that. And I wish I had made better decisions as a kid, because how could you not fall in love with that figure? And I can just imagine as a 7-year-old what that would have been like.
So I love Scorponok. I actually had an older one, which I still have actually. It's in my sales pile, which I've just had for years. And a mate of mine.
What, the sales pile? Yeah, we know.
yeah. The sales pile is never ending. Honestly, I'll finish it off eventually. So my wife will be very happy when it's done. The Scorponok that I had, a very good mate of mine, who I've known for decades now. He came around with his 2 boys, and the elder one, who actually at the time I think would have been 7 at the time, about 2 years ago. So yeah, about 7. And he was looking for something to play with and whatever else. And I was like, well, do you want to check this out? And just gave him Scorponok, and obviously G1 Scorponok, and as you say, his eyes just lit up. I've never seen joy on a child's face before quite like it. And it was a real, I mean, obviously, I share Transformers and stuff with my son, but for me, it was at the time just like a real great moment. Do you know what I mean? Just to see this little face just absolutely encapsulated, just so in love with this thing. Particularly as I guess
we lose sight of that, don't we?
Yeah, you do.
Adult collectors.
You definitely do. Even if you
I
have
remember
kids,
giving Apeface to my daughter for the first time, and Apeface is not a toy that many G1 collectors will tell you is aged well. And she was just smitten with it. I've still got in my favourites folder on my phone this picture of my daughter playing, just whooshing around this jet, going shoo, shoo, with the G1 Apeface
there you go.
in jet mode. And there's just something about those toys.
That is what it's about, and that is the mark of a good toy. Ultimately, is if you can put it into a child's hands and they're happy with it, that's good criteria, realistically, isn't it? So
absolutely.
Is it well made and durable and all of that kind of stuff as well? Of course, is important. And there are definitely toys that I wouldn't give to my boy, because I know that they're just going to break. Do you know what I mean? That's the thing. So that's not good either. But yeah. Scorponok is a great example anyway. That's a really, really good toy, for sure.
You were mentioning in Titan's Return, like, everyone got a Headmaster.
Uh-huh.
One of the best examples of, I think, that working nicely and having some meaning was the Quick Switch repaint of Six Shot.
Yeah, of course.
Because, there's so much in that G1 Quick Switch that says to you, this was probably supposed to be a Headmaster. Even in the instructions, it's a picture of Brainstorm's Headmaster on his head in the instructions, and just the boxy shape of it and all the rest of it, and you just know that was supposed to be a Headmaster.
It really does look like it, doesn't it? And even the design of the head, as you say, the kind of boxy head, it's even got. I'm trying to think from memory now. It's even got the little flap, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, and the 2 little wings going backwards as well. But yes, it does have the cover.
I was trying to think, the little flap on the forehead flap or whatever that covers the face. I think it's a no-brainer. I remember discussing this before and just being like, oh, that makes so much sense. I guess the fact that he finally got to be a Headmaster in a later iteration is really, really good.
But a repaint of Six Shot.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, as he was Six Shot's son, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, originally.
No drill tank. Sadly, no drill tank.
Is there no drill tank on that?
No.
On that toy?
No, it is pretty much just Six Shots modes.
Okay.
Because it was
fine.
part of that. Was it Siege of Cybertron? It was either the Velocitron one or the Siege of
Chaos
Cybertron.
on Velocitron was one.
Chaos on, yeah. So he came with one of those sets, and typically they would just be repainted, but of course they had the clones in as well. But that was a really lovely toy. That I loved that mold, and Quick Switch was really nice. I mean, and I think you and I don't know about you, Liam, but certainly Sixo and I are in the minority in that we really, really like G1 Quick Switch, actually.
I love it.
No, I'm quite fond of him. I had him as a kid, so he's quite nostalgic, and I've still got him now. He's that good.
Did you have him as a kid?
It's just something fun.
I never saw him as a kid.
I did.
No, neither did I.
Oh no. Did you have the Ladybird book where he appears?
No.
Oh, I never saw that one.
No,
I
remember
had the very common ones you used to see in a Safeways or a Sainsbury's. I think those are the ones I had.
I think I'm going to disappoint you though, because I remember getting it, and I remember my first thought when I opened it was, "What is this?" I was that sort of confused by it and disappointed. I was like looking at it going, "What?" It's like I like the idea of it as a kid. I was like, "Oh, 6 modes," and then you kind of pulled it out, and it just, I don't know, it's so square, but it's one of that I grew to love after playing with it quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird toy, I mean, no doubt, and I can see why people maybe don't rate some of the modes. But
it turns into a boat, and so few Transformers turn into a boat.
It's true. How many do? There's Sea Spray. There's a Sea Watch.
Sea Watch, yeah.
One of the little.
See, we're already into the weeds with that. Getting to the boat. That Micromaster one.
Yeah, one of the Micromasters. And that's, you're right. When you get down to one of the Micromasters, you know that you're kind of reaching the end of the list, really. Yeah. There's a Micromaster.
And actually go to as well. Display. That's like straight away.
Yeah.
So few.
I don't know, is Scourge a boat? Is it
Space
a bar
boat.
of soap? Space boat? Space soap?
Space soap.
So, do you know how we were just talking about Scorponok as a kid? Could I just tell a quick story about that? So, Christmas 1988, I don't know why me and my cousin knew that all of our presents were at his house, but we knew they were. And so we went around and, searching for them, as you're not supposed to do. And we found them. We found all of them. And in there was 2 of everything. There's lots of other toys, but the ones that stick out were, there were 2 Power Master Optimus Prime. So we were both like high-fiving. Woohoo, we've got those. But there was just one Scorponok. One.
Oh, man. And you didn't know who was going to get it?
Well, no. At the time, I was convinced it was me. I was like, that's my grandma. That's a my grandma present. And I was laughing. And there I was, secure in this knowledge it was going to be mine. And it bloody wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah.
Denied.
That one still rankles to this day. I mean, I've got it now. And every time I look at it, that's all I think of.
You were knock blocked.
Yeah. It just pops into my head all of the time.
I don't know, what would be worse though? Discovering it and knowing that one of you is going to get it and it turning out not to be you when you thought it would be, or if you've just not known and on the day you guys opened the presents and he just ended up with a Scorponok and you didn't.
I think probably that one, to be honest. I think I'd probably be more shocked and annoyed. Whereas then I'd sort of built myself up to it. I just was kind of in a state of disbelief. It was just kind of this like frozenness. On the one hand, it was like, I was so excited by Power Master Optimus Prime, but then this was just like eating away at me slightly. It was almost like I'd like crashed and just needed rebooting like an hour later.
Oh man!
So what's your favourite Headmaster, Liam?
Probably Chrome Dome.
I think we've gone through that.
Yeah, we have. Haven't we?
I didn't want to say. I was just kind of
prime cut material there.
We've already hit rewind on the podcast.
No. We'll leave it in. We'll leave it in.
Bumper.
It's all good.
He wasn't a Headmaster, was he?
Well, most of them come with a detached head, so I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, do you know, it's funny you mentioning the Christmas memory, actually, because that just reminded me of something. I remembered must have been at 86 or 87 Christmas. My mum doesn't know this. She's probably not going to be listening to this. It's fine. But I peeked into one of my Christmas presents, and it was Metroplex. And it's the only time, God's honour, that I've ever peeked at a Christmas present in my entire life. I remember looking at the box and being like, and knowing it was for me and just being so excited. I mean, I was little, obviously, and I just peeked slightly under the corner of the paper and just saw that it was Metroplex, and I was like, dead excited and what have you. But then instantly felt so bad and so guilty about it that the whole thing has like burned in my brain, if you like, as this sort of like terrible thing that I did. And I, for that reason, now I'm like totally cool about not knowing what Christmas presents are and whatever else. It's sort of stuck with me, if that makes sense.
Man, we were not similar
children. Did it affect your enjoyment of getting it?
It did a little bit, yeah. If I'm not going to lie, like I love Metroplex and I loved getting it, but I remember like a slight feeling of guilt at like having peeked at what it was. which is a weird thing because it was just in my own head, that guilt, if that makes sense. Like nobody put that on me. Nobody else even knew. Do you know what I mean? But it's definitely kind of stuck with me, yeah.
All right, so shall we move on to Liam? What is your favourite gimmick from Transformers?
Well, tough question, and this will surprise you. I'm going to pick Micromasters.
Oof. Good call.
I mean, I know
I wouldn't have considered that a gimmick, but yeah, it's just, of course, it's a gimmick. You know, it might be a whole line, but is it a gimmick?
Well, yeah,
it's
well,
a
at the
gimmick.
time,
small as a gimmick.
It's a gimmick.
Yeah,
it's shrunk down. That's the whole selling point, isn't it? They've basically just copied Micro Machines and turned them into little robots. But I suppose if we're gonna go there, I suppose it's more interactivity, isn't it? That's the gimmick. You've got little Transformers, little bases. There's even a fire station, spaceships, all sorts of stuff, little ramps. Everything connects together, and it's just beautiful.
I would agree.
It does have amazing variety. Yeah.
Yeah, Micromaster's true highlight.
And the boat. There's a boat.
There's a boat.
There's definitely a boat.
Yeah.
They cover everything in Micromasters, don't they? They go through there's combiners, there's little tankers and trucks and trains, everything.
They really ploughed through it in the space of 2 years. Yeah. I mean, the primary 2 years that Micromasters, obviously, it kind of, you do get some after that in, Japan and what have you. But they really kind of ploughed through a lot of stuff in that 2 years, didn't they? But I think it's impossible to not love Micromasters. But do you have a favourite, Liam?
Yeah, I think, it's more of a base, isn't it? The Skystalker base.
Nice.
Great choice.
Big,
Best choice.
Giant space shuttle that just converts into a strange little battle station with a ramp on the front. And it's just fantastic. And obviously it's piloted by a Porsche.
That's true.
Porsche 959, no less.
Of course you know that.
Yeah, that was the primary selling point for me, was the Micromaster. I remember picking that one out.
I love you just throwing the space shuttle away, just like this old tat.
I think it's the only Micromaster I had as a kid as well. The only Micromaster was Skystalker base. Yeah, it's the only one I had. Really? I think it was actually probably the very last Transformer I ever owned as a child. The last one I was bought. No, got a classic Sunstreaker actually a couple of years afterwards. But yeah, that was almost a nostalgia thing.
You didn't have Action Masters?
Even back then. No, didn't have Action Masters, no Pretenders. I don't think I even had any Autobot Headmasters. Just the two Horrorcons and Skullcruncher, and just Skystalker.
Maz, not to derail the discussion a moment, but I just brought up Sunstreaker.
I might have mentioned him.
So, could I just tell you, do you remember how I mentioned that I bought a KO of Sunstreaker? Right. So, I didn't mention that when I bought it. I was slightly drunk. So, when it arrived in a box. It looked immaculate. And when I bought it, I was looking at the picture, the one picture in the box, all there. So I unwrap it, and it's the first time I've ever handled a Sunstreaker, so I'm excited. But I'm looking at it thinking, something's missing, and I can't figure out why it looks strange. I'm looking at it, everything, the toy, there's nothing broken, it's never been transformed, there's no stickers on it. It's absolutely immaculate. And then it hits me, there's no accessories. So after all of this time,
no hand.
So after nearly 40 years, I finally got a Sunstreaker, but he's got no hands, no missiles, none of those little upside down wine glasses that go on his shoulders, nothing. And it's going to cost me more to buy those accessories to fit in than it would have to, just buy the toy.
That's so annoying.
We'll just find you a good vintage one. Just gonna find you a proper Sunstreaker.
Yeah.
You've been waiting too long to be disappointed again.
It's taught me a lesson, and I don't really dabble in chaos anyway. And this one is terrible because
I don't think the lesson is chaos here, mate. I think the lesson is don't buy drunk.
There's two lessons. It's a teaching moment, isn't it?
Multiple lessons here.
But it's oh god, it's like the front of it. It's like his feet are like two different size shoes. It's like one's a 9 and one's a 9.5. It just nothing is right with this toy.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That shouldn't be one's first experience of a Sunstreaker.
No.
It should just be everlasting happiness and fulfillment.
That is kind of a problem with those early I'm gonna get roasted for saying this, but those early Diaclone toys, that's the weakness of them as toys. It's just all the bits, right? Like if you lose the accessories, no hands. Do you know what I mean? And I guess it is the same with Headmasters to an extent.
I think that's kind of worse.
Yeah, no head.
A little bit worse.
Yeah, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot with that. But I don't know. I guess I remember even as a kid, Optimus Prime, no hands, you know what I mean? Whatever, all of that kind of stuff. It's just a bit of a weird one, isn't it?
Well, do any of you recall any like major Micromaster related quality issues?
Skystalker has one. Actually, funnily enough, there's a thing. I got a vintage Skystalker in the box recently, and someone mentioned this to me. It's completely random that you can get that toy, I think even sealed in the box, and there's a kind of factory error or whatever, but a production or assembly error where the wings can actually just be broken in the package, or if you can just, which is such a shame. It's always unfortunate. There are examples like that, aren't there, of vintage Transformers, G1 Transformers that are just broken in the box, and this could be one of them.
Yeah, and Scattershot's another one, isn't he? He suffers from a wing cracking problem, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Does he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's quite famous, isn't it?
They're really brittle. They feel brittle as well. I remember this. I had my first experience of a Computron just a couple of years ago, and that was a bit of a hair-raising moment moving those wings.
How funny! I've never thought of Scattershot as a fragile toy.
I've had 3, and 2 of them have had the cracked wing problem, and on the last one, I just don't move it, and it's not something. It's not like you're doing it through force or anything. It's just those wings are so tight, and with age, they just seem to get tighter. And you can feel it going as you're pulling it.
It's not good, is it?
Liam, did you have a lot of Micromasters as a kid? Did you have a Skystalker as a kid?
I did. It was one I got to choose out of the catalogue for Christmas. So the ones I particularly remember are that one and the Motivators. Not in the same year, obviously, but they're the ones I got to choose from a catalogue from my grandmaster to pick a toy. And Skystalker was the one that just attracted me to it straight away, because I love spaceships, I love shuttles, all of sort of spacey stuff. But yeah, I had loads of Micromasters. I had some of the transports, which are now farcically expensive to buy.
Yeah, so hard to find nice. But did you have them, like, were you like buying them off other kids, or were these being bought for you at the time?
No, I was very lucky in that my grandma used to take me. I used to go shopping with my grandma every Saturday morning, and so on around to like Wilko's, Sainsbury's, and all of these places. We'd always stop. There was a toy shop in Nottingham City Centre called Zodiac Toys, and it was directly across from the Sainsbury's. So we'd go straight in there, and she let me pick something. And so it was always like a smaller toy.
Oh, Zodiac's one of those like classic 80s toy stores, isn't it? I've seen the black and white photos of the inside of one of these stores, just wall-to-wall classic 80s toys, just almost like you don't see that anymore anywhere.
It was amazing, but we also passed, which was an even more exciting toy shop. Do you remember BT's?
Yes, yeah.
Did that exist in the South?
Yes, we had one in Southgate, North London, I remember it.
Yeah, so we used to go in there, but all the shops sort of, back then there were toy shops everywhere, but the absolute king was, there's a massive co-op at the top of Nottingham, and the top floor was just toys. And I remember when we got to go there on a Saturday, it was just like, you're just amazed. And that's the place I always used to go and ask for them to check in the back whether they had a swoop. And they never did.
No, and they never will.
It wasn't released in the UK, was it?
No. But you could pop over the channel to France and get one.
Yeah. Well,
Really?
I'm sure lots of kids did that.
Actually, do you know what? There was a seller on eBay who had a Predacon, a G1 Predacon for sale. And I got a message from a friend in Europe who said, mate, could you just pick that up for me? I've been looking for a bilingual European dive bomb for ages. And I messaged the guy who was clearly English, and I said, where did you get that dive bomb? And he goes, when I was a kid, my parents we regularly used to get on the ferry and go over to France and used to buy Transformers like Blaster and Swoop. They also had Shockwave and Predacons, clearly all the stuff that we didn't have in the UK. So it's obviously some people were doing that.
It's insane, isn't it? I've no doubt that some people were doing it. Not just the average family. That's all. But
the very lucky people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just mad that they released that stuff in France or various bits of Europe and not in the UK. But there you go.
I remember Paul from Spacebridge mentioning that one of the reasons Swoop didn't get released in the UK was to do with its fragility and its size per cost, like the amount that those Dinobots cost compared to how much toy you actually got for Swoop was not considered particularly conducive to the UK market or something like that, and the fact that it was so fragile. I remember he cited those as reasons why we wouldn't see Swoop in the UK.
It is a very fragile toy.
And it is strange though, isn't it, though, considering like he was given a starring role in the comic, like he's given his own issues in the UK specific comic, wasn't he?
Yeah. It's always the same in that comic though. They put all the characters that were like the big characters are all toys that just didn't get released in the UK. It's just
Shockwave and the Predacons, isn't it?
Yeah. And Fort Max and whatever else. It's just, they're just teasing
Unless
us.
you're in Great Yarmouth.
Unless you're in Great Yarmouth. Or you enter a colouring competition.
Yeah.
Or you hopped on a ferry.
But not if you come second, Santiago Jones.
No. What did he get for second place? Do you remember?
I think a lifetime of regret.
Yeah,
It was.
but a lifetime of social media content.
Yes.
He got the Micromaster. Is it Skyhopper, the one that turns into a helicopter?
Oh, that's
It's
pretty
nice.
good. That's
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
good.
That's not bad. That's not bad. But
not Fort
you know,
Max.
first place was Fort Max. You know.
Yeah, it's not Fort Max. It's good. It's certainly.
It didn't wipe up those tears.
Yeah, exactly. Had to sky hop on home with his disappointment. Micromasters I'm a big fan of as well. So I think you've chosen well there, and it's definitely a gimmick. I think it's. But would you agree that it's another one that's not been done as well since?
I would, because I've been quite a fan of how they brought it back in Earthrise, but they don't feel the same, and it's not in that I'm old and they don't feel the same. There's a kind of, I don't know, the way they go together, they don't stick, and I think it's because they've tried to give them articulation, but it just doesn't. I don't know. I love them. They're just not quite as.
That was kind of
solid.
I'll be honest. That was my kind of assessment of them, and I think we're probably running the risk of sounding like old gits that just do you know what I mean? Like,
let me counter that old git energy by saying I think the spirit of Micromasters was so beautifully recreated in a bunch of lines, like Robots in Disguise 2015 had some fantastic little Legion class figures. Like that strong arm is just fantastic. That little strong arm, and the little bisque as well is a brilliant toy. They had some brilliant toys of that size that really kind of fulfilled that need for excellent small transforming toys that felt quality.
Yeah.
And then you had the minicons, didn't you? Sort of.
Minicons are great. They're pretty cool, and obviously they've got extra functionality as well. So that was
Micromasters evolved.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of becoming vintage now in itself. Armada.
Oh, it is, isn't it? Oh,
yep.
bloody
20 years
kids
old.
in their youth.
20 years old now, and actually I did a bit about this recently because I was reading about it and like what is vintage and not, and actually the best description I found was that in clothing, vintage is typically considered to be 20 years plus. Anything 20 years plus is considered vintage. So that's now just kind of what I roll with. 20 years. There you go. And Armada on that basis is becoming vintage.
But yeah, with the new Micromasters though, it's pretty fun. I don't know if you've seen that set where they've got the mask sort of homages.
Yeah, I saw your picture.
Amazing. That's so cool. I so want to see Rhino as Ironworks or something like that. That would just be fantastic.
That's just it. They've got the little moles now, and it's something you think you should see more of.
Yeah, it's pretty creative.
I just want to see more M.A.S.K. I think it'd be great to see more M.A.S.K.
Everybody wants to see more M.A.S.K. I mean, how they haven't redecoed any of the 18,000 movie Optimus Primes they've done into Rhino toys.
It's never been done.
Staggers me. But I would just like to say as well that I have bought every single one of the Micromasters they've done in Siege and Earthrise.
Oh,
and I think all of them, because I love them. They're just not quite as good, but they're still great. But
they're still good, isn't
it? The base modes. Yeah, and the base modes as well. I love how they brought them back, because there's not really much you could do to reinvent them other than that. Because if you just brought them back out as they were, they'd just be exactly the same, because there's not really a lot that technology would bring to it. But to bring them back as robots, it's just an absolutely inspired way to do it.
I have the grease pit, and I have to say it's not my favourite thing ever. Like I do the actual base mode, I think is better on the G1 toy by far.
Oh yeah.
But the base mode and the kind of weaponized base mode, if you like, the two. But the robot mode on the new thing is great, really, really cool. And you're right. I do love the idea of what they've done with it, turning it into a robot. I think that's cool.
It's when these modern lines are at their best, though, isn't it? When they bring back the old, but they infuse it with something new, so it's different. So, you can't just say I might as well just buy the vintage toy, because you're getting something different out of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a shame if they just straight up copy what was done 30, 40 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's nice if they kind of put a bit of a fresh spin on it or whatever.
Yeah. Although I would happily buy reissues of them. Yeah.
Yeah, make it a Headmaster. Everyone goes nuts. But yeah, no, it's a cool thing what they've done with the new Micromasters. I just think, again, maybe a bit like Headmasters, really. I think is what you said, Liam, about the articulation and all of that. I don't think you need that necessarily, and that was my thing about some of the new Micromasters and the little Headmasters. is that they've almost made them too intricate now. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the original Micros were so kind of chunky and just satisfying. Like you could just sit and transform them for, back and forth and whatever else, and nothing fell off, no legs popped off or any of that kind of, gubbins. Whereas now they just feel a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Over-engineered?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe it is that. So
I got that same kind of feeling with a number of the third-party masters
definitely.
that they did. I remember Pandanus's little Headmaster was kind of along those lines a little bit.
Yeah.
But even just as recently as, like I mentioned, the RID Bisque little toy, I mean, that I think does still strike a really lovely balance between a toy that you can't put down, that's really fun to just constantly transform back and forth, but also has like a modicum of posability and just a little bit of articulation. I just think that nailed it. Plus, it was a orange race car lobster called Bisque,
which is
just marvelous.
Yeah, that's won the day, really, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean that speaks to something, though, doesn't it? That's important about gimmicks is they are an important part of making them toys for kids. It's like when we look at the old toys, they've all got like missile launchers and stuff like that, and we don't think of them so much as like kids' toys now because we're old and they're very collector focused. But so much of that is what those things are for, aren't they? They are to draw in kids, and it's an important part of playing with them.
Definitely. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. I guess some gimmicks now actually are a pain in the bum, aren't they? If anything, like as an adult collector, there are definitely gimmicks out there that I don't appreciate. Do you know what I mean? Just because I'm like, like firing missiles for me now. I would just...
Turbo Masters, God,
it's just a nightmare. Do you know what I mean?
Lethal.
Yeah, lethal, and also how much of your day do you realistically want to spend on all fours under a cabinet trying to find some bloody missile that's like fired off into the mid distance? You know, it's just like tedious beyond belief.
Speaking of infuriating gimmicks on a vintage toy, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that you needed the Power Master to unlock a certain part of the transformation, there wouldn't be so many broken Darkwings.
Yeah, true.
Oh.
It's true.
I mean, and I didn't realize when I first got that toy, I was really wary about moving that nose cone, the whole front of the plane. I thought most people break it as soon as they move it, and then I realized, it's just because they don't put the Power Master in. There's actually nothing wrong with this joint at all.
But Darkwing is a toy I still don't enjoy transforming, I would say. I like the transformation. It's
amazing, that whole twisting the torso.
Twist is so cool.
Incredible.
But I like it in theory, but I don't enjoy it in practice. And it is just the nervousness of it.
It's Dreadwind that I don't enjoy. Because of the way that the wings fold up, and you've got to get that at the right angle and slide it up and down. I can already see stress marks on my own one.
Yeah, it's complicated. Then wait till you get the Master Force versions, and then see how nervous you are with those. I mean, I've only transformed mine twice, I think, and genuinely I was like sweating buckets both times. I was just like, oh my god, they're just like lovely toys to look at, but you don't want to handle them too much. Do you know what I mean?
No, and combining them into the Mega Jet they look insanely cool, but it's not something I think I'll be doing on a regular basis.
The Power Masters generally are quite fragile toys, though.
But so fantastic.
Yeah, I love them.
Like I think Double Dealer is one of my all-time favorite G1 toys. Any toy, and also just Power Master Prime I love, and God Jinrai just is an Apex Armor Power Master Optimus Prime. For those who bought the Toys R Us version, it's just a superb toy, impossible to put down. So many fun modes. Yes, it's a brick. Yes, Double Dealer's a brick, but gosh, they're just
That's
so
part of the fun,
fun
isn't
to
it?
hold. Yeah. But they're substantial, and they've got cool modes. And as a kid, I mean, how much would you have loved Double Dealer? What a toy!
Yeah, I had it as a kid.
I didn't, and I very much would have liked it.
Yeah, I never even saw it as a kid. It's one I just became aware of as an adult. Just one that needed to be picked up for the collection. And when I had it, it was just such a wow moment.
Yeah. It's good to see people now kind of appreciating the new version that's obviously recently come out. Is it Earthrise? It's Earthrise, isn't it? Double Dealer. Yeah. And it does look really, really cool. I've not seen it in hand, but it does look cool. But it's great to see kind of that character, getting a bit of love.
Legitimate triple changer, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Well, he turns into like a vulture, doesn't he? And missile truck and a robot.
Yeah.
But he never gets spoken about as a triple changer or in the conversation about what are the best triple changers. Triple changing is an awesome gimmick. And I think virtually all the ones I've ever owned, I've always loved. And just, having that extra mode is one extra thing to do with this toy, one extra way to enjoy it. And Double Dealer doesn't always get mentioned as a triple changer, but it is an extremely successful and fantastic looking triple changer.
I would
with an extra Power Master gimmick on top.
Destroyers from deep space.
So what's your favourite gimmick then, Mez?
I came to an answer really quickly, and it's always the one that comes out straight away is Target Masters, straight away. And that's from
say that.
how... But the thing is, with Target Masters, they're not integral to the transformation of the toy in any way. And I had to really ask myself, am I saying Target Masters because I think the gimmick is the best I've ever experienced? Or is it because the toys that got Target Masters were just fantastic? Things like Trigger Happy, Slugslinger, Misfire. And then also toys I didn't get the first time around, like Scourge. I didn't get a Scourge the first time around, and I really wanted Scourge.
Yeah.
And then I got Target Master Scourge, and it was just like, here's that fantastic toy you wanted with extra cool box art, an extra cool little window on the front of the box, and a fantastic little figure to go along with it. And you don't have to use the Target Master exclusively in vehicle mode. You can use the really cool blue head ray, but he's also got a Target Master. And it was the same with Hot Rod. So I always coveted a Hot Rod. And you know what? It's really silly. Even just the way they roll off the tongue. Target Master Hot Rod, Target Master Scourge. I mean, these were seriously cool things to me as a kid. And I always loved the toys that came that way. And also just the little dudes themselves were so nicely sculpted.
Yeah.
Especially those, for example, Cup's Target Master or...
Recoil.
Yeah, because it had the 3 pieces.
Yes, it does. It's got the extra...
It's that extra level of cool. And
yeah.
And they've been done reasonably well all the way through Transformers. Even the recent Legends versions and the Battle Masters. I mean, the little Legends Target Master that came with the LG Hot Rod is fantastic.
It's gorgeous, really aren't cool. They are gorgeous little figures.
Masterpiece Artfire's, Target Master. Even MP9's, the one that the Firebolt that came with the Hasbro release.
Yeah. Which was
These are all superb.
That was a Hasui invention. Even though it was a Hasbro release originally, it was that little thing was designed by legendary designer Hasui. But yeah, no, I agree. The Artfire Target Master is one of the best little of the size. That size of transforming figure. It's one of the best toys, actually. I think genuinely, it's brilliant. Yeah. Word of hyperbole there. It's just exceptional.
I was so hoping that was going to lead to a Masterpiece Scourge.
Yeah,
and we would get a fracas with it.
Yeah.
But, Target Masters, I think both because I just found the transforming gun thing really cool. It was another opportunity to get... I mean, they're probably the first legitimate toy reissues, aren't they? Yeah, in Transformers.
Yes.
The next year, you got the same toy, just with a little bit extra. Buy it again. And
now with a belly button.
Right.
If you're Blair.
And just the actual figures that were Target Masters were so fantastic. And I'm so bummed that in no way, shape or form did we ever get anything like the 4th Decepticon Target Master Jet. I would love that. Shouldn't that be what third parties are doing? Basically, recreate that aesthetic, that size, and just have that 4th Target Master Jet that can stand next to your G1 Target Masters. And, they could basically have free range to make it whoever they wanted with whatever robot mode they wanted. And I've often thought about TFN commissions, getting Nick Roach or someone like that to just say to him, you decide what you think this guy's robot mode should look like and do me a commission, standing alongside Slugslinger, Misfire, and Trigger.
Yeah. I'd love to see more of that missing Target Master, if you know what I mean, some concept artwork or whatever. Absolutely love to see it. It's fascinating. I do love all of that, the stuff that was unproduced from back in the day. I just think it's, so interesting to think what might have been and kind of what was going through their brains and concepts that were kind of thought of for one year and then shelved till another and how things changed and what became what. And I love all of that. Absolutely love it.
Well, Power Master Prime's head was supposed to be a Headmaster, wasn't it? It was supposed to turn into Roller.
Yeah, that's true. It was. So... But yeah, no, I think you've hit the money with Target Masters. It is a great gimmick, and I think you're right that they're great toys, but it's a cool gimmick as well. So it's kind of a double whammy, really, isn't it? Whereas there are some that have great gimmicks, but they're not as good toys, or maybe vice versa. But yeah, Target Masters is kind of good on both counts.
And if you collected G1 in the late 90s and the early 2000s, Target Masters, especially Target Master Hot Rod, was super rare toy and really desirable. And there was a time when loose ones would go for £150. I remember clearly paying, almost £100 for a loose Target Master Cyclonus and thinking that was an absolute bargain, at the time, because they were so difficult to get, especially. And in the UK, we were actually quite lucky compared to the States. Was you'll find a lot more Target Master Scourge toys in the UK than you will in the US. So we actually had them more readily available, but they had this aura about them for so long in the early online fandom as well. And obviously we've had reissue Target Master Hot Rod now, and they found their way into Titan's Return and LG and all that. But I do remember a time when a TM Hot Rod was absolutely number one desirable vintage figure.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's a great toy. And you're right, the little Target Masters themselves are done so well. Just the sculpting, everything is so superb. There's a level of, again, they're so simple because, Firebolt, for example, is just one movement. You just flip the legs over. That is it. But I like that.
They're made to be played with, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, except the Decepticon ones that snap immediately.
They break. Yeah, they break.
I think the idea was that they wanted them to ratchet, but what ended up happening is it just stresses the casing and they just snap.
That is
Every time I photograph those toys, for some reason, I always just think, I've probably got one more transformation out of this before it's gone for good, so make it a good one.
I think it's Trigger Happy, I have two, one in each mode. And I've got in mind at some point, if I ever, it's not like a priority for me, but it's like it's a TFN thing, or do you know what I mean? If ever I just see one in good condition for a cheap price, I'll pick it up for sure, just to have one in each mode for sure.
And then, with 1988, the double Target Masters, they were never quite as cool because they looked like just people with a load of gubbins on their back, and they were smaller, which it's almost like they should have been cooler. But I did really love my Landfill as a kid. I thought that was a superb toy. And I've really come to appreciate them. Yeah, as an adult especially, things like Spinister and Needlenose, Quake.
Quake is great.
Yeah. Quick Mix too.
Quick Mix. Great shout.
What I think is cool about Quake is that you can put the Target Masters on the tank.
As the barrel.
The barrel of the tank. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a nifty little feature. But yeah, the actual little Target Master lads from 1988 themselves they're fine, but it's the fact that some of them have just got the handle of the gun sticking out from between their legs, which is, as I say it, doesn't sound... It sounds worse, actually, as I say it like that. I didn't mean it in that way at all. But, it's not a good look, certainly.
And it didn't seem to bother me at all that, the larger ones with the 1987 had, the massive peg coming out of their chest. That was just completely dominating the look there, but didn't seem to bother at all.
You're right, and for some reason, it's not... Yeah, even in this discussion, as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I guess they do. But it just hadn't registered as a problem for me, for some reason.
And I was so thrilled when we got this reissue exclusive Orion packs repainted from Cup in eHobby, and it was they just inverted the colours on recoil, and we got another Target Master that was G1, and that was just so happy.
It is very cool.
I would just love to still see more of that.
What, eHobby?
Anything, yeah. The Target Master Hot Rod mould exists.
Yeah.
Why
do a pink one.
Right. Invert the colours, whatever.
Why are they not doing it?
Why are we not getting more pink hot rods? Where are they?
It's maddening. Yeah, it's maddening. It's so funny. That pink hot rod, that prototype, is just one of the most gorgeous toys I think I've seen. I've only seen pictures of it. You've seen it in, obviously.
Yeah, I've handled the hard copy, which has got the extendable legs and actually stands taller than a regular hot rod.
Is that
right? It stands tall. It's got a little bit of extra space down there. And I wonder if that's kind of why what's missing on the production version means that those thigh stickers always get scratched up. But yeah, the pink... there's also the pink production sample, which is basically almost the production G1 hot rod just in completely pink, and it's so beautiful. And of course, you see it that way because you spent your whole life looking at it in those maroon colors. So anything that's remotely different is immediately attractive. But and actually, the funny thing was that the one I was handling had the same putty in the arm joint as the one that's photographed in Toy Fair from 1986.
Yeah.
It is the precise same hot rod that was
Amazing.
photographed
Really?
for that catalogue. And when you hold something like, I think this is a historic item.
That's great.
Really amazing that people can actually own these. And
Yeah.
do own these.
These are the catalogues we all stared at as children.
I was just going to say, that hot rod in that catalogue, for me, that is hours of my childhood right there. Just sat staring at that thing. I was mesmerised by that hot rod as a kid. But even as a kid, I'm sure you guys are the same. Even as a child, I mean, it's even more obvious as an adult, but as a kid, I would sit and look at the toys and think, why are they different to what I've got in my hand? You know what I mean? Like, why is Astro Train a different colour and things like that? It's, it was definitely something that caught my attention.
I don't think I recognised that much as a kid. For me, it was more, why do they look so different from the cartoon?
Yeah.
In some cases.
That never bothered me, I don't think.
I do remember fixating on.
I remember fixating on Jetfire the first time I saw him in a little booklet, thinking, "Who is this? This is not Jetfire," and was completely miffed because I never saw. I got the toy from another kid at school, through trading years later, but I never actually saw one on the shelf or anything like that. So I was convinced for years that they'd put in the wrong toy.
Brilliant.
That's what it was.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and
those UK catalogues have some gems, don't they? I'm just thinking of Broadside. How
very
different that is.
The prototype. I was just imagining like an adult sitting down to explain to childhood Liam all the various story and saga behind Jetfire and why it was different, and you just being like, "What?" As a kid.
Oh, we were so naive.
Yeah, but Broadside is a good one, definitely. That is a good one.
I remember that Cyclonus as well from the UK catalogues with mostly silver head. And that Cyclonus is out there somewhere because it was photographed for that catalogue. And then if you read the Ladybird books, that's exactly the way he's illustrated in there as well. It's that same prototype sample, so it's out there somewhere.
Someone has it.
You've had one of the prototypes, haven't you?
I've had an unpainted Cyclonus prototype and a blue-eared Cyclonus production sample with slightly different stickers. They came from the same source. And they had, slightly different molding features to what was actually finally released. But those were really cool prototypes that I had.
So what are some of the kind of after G1 gimmicks that we can think of then that stand out in your memories?
Well, do you remember how Hot Wheels and Co. used to have those toy cars that change colour when you put them in water? And how Transformers had that was it G2? It
was in G2, yeah. Colour changes and, what were they called? Aquaspeeders.
Aquaspeeders, yeah. That's whole time, isn't it? Like we were talking about with the Global Hypercolour t-shirts. And...
yes. That's really of its time. That's like so 90s to the extreme. It's just like... Not even
that one year, everybody was obsessed with water and colour changing.
Yeah, it was like a real thing. It probably seems very, very dated now, I would guess. But yeah, it was really like a thing. And then with the Stormtroopers as well.
Yeah. That's where they are, aren't they? They're in that sort of era.
All Generation 2. So the Stormtroopers were the Decepticons, the Aquaspeeders were the Autobots, but then there was also in Europe, there was in America rather, there was the colour changes. So I'm trying to remember now, doing this all from memory. You've got the Aquaspeeders and the Stormtroopers in Europe, and then in America they had the colour changes, which were the same toys. They didn't get the Stormtroopers; they were the same as the Aquaspeeders, but just in different colours.
Yeah.
So, and trying to track them all down is a bit of a faff actually these days.
I just find it amazing how you can both just talk about Transformers Stormtroopers without blinking. It just still seems so strange to me.
Well, we got a whole movie that was basically Star Wars that just kind of ripped off. So it's not the most egregious thing that the line has ever done. Let's put it that way. But hey ho. But yeah, no, that was a really cool gimmick, definitely. Any others?
Well, it's still G1, but it's a little bit further on the timeline than most people are used to for G1 in Europe. But I always thought Brainmasters were pretty cool. And I only really ever experienced the Brainmaster gimmick for the first time with Masterpiece Star Saber in hand. And I just thought that toy did it really nicely.
It did do it nicely. Definitely. The originals are, again, very different. I would say, actually, that's a really good update to an old gimmick. Do you know what I mean? The originals are very, very cool, but they've got that kind of late G1 chunkiness to them, the originals. They're like supremely chunky toys, particularly the Road Caesar, the three of them. Obviously motivators when they were released in Europe. But yeah, really, really cool. I love those original toys. Absolutely love them.
I still have my childhood. Is it Lightspeed, the red one?
Yeah.
And he has no tires, no roof, and he looks like he's been dragged through hedges, backwards, forwards, upside down.
That toy,
in the right state.
It's almost, not impossible. It is possible to find it in decent condition, but 9 times out of 10, it will just be battered to anything. Honestly, it's just mad. I don't know what it is about that toy. It just seems to go through a battering.
Modern gimmicks. Here's one. 3-step bisque.
What is it, man, with you and bisque?
I don't know. This lobster
You've
former
turned it
is
to
just...
Kit.
Yeah.
Well, it's his fault. He's the one who brought it to the pub. So, for those who don't know, Ticknat, UK Transformers fan, and a lot of us, we used to meet up in the pub in the UK, and we used to bring toys to... In the pub. It was a public house where people used to meet and...
I've just forgotten what it is. It's been so long, I can't remember the pub.
Times.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
But yeah, he would bring these wild toys that none of us would ever buy, and one of them was 3-step bisque, and we used to mock him, endlessly about the 1 steps and the 3 steps that he would buy, and this toy, it looked great in car mode, proper big chunky toy, a kid would love it, but then this 3-step kind of part automorph transformation in both directions, you just couldn't put it down. It was instantly like, oh my goodness, this is a fantastically engineered toy Transformer. And I know I went out the next day and bought it, and I think Nick went out and bought one the next day as well. So that's one that stands out, and that's one that I still have, despite all the modern toys that I've sold. That's one I kept.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I knew there was a reason you kept talking about bisque.
Yeah, I still have the little Legion one too.
Figured you were just being sponsored by it or something. I
Sponsored by a lobster format.
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. Just get a little fee every time you mention it or something. I don't know. But very, very cool toy. I played with that one of Ticknat's as well, and it's really, really exceptional.
That does go back to something though, doesn't it? Talking about how we would ignore those toys and how sort of like toy lines now have become split. Like when you look at Generation 1, all the gimmicks are just in the toy line. It's like one continuous line. Whereas in sort of modern toy lines, there are like many different SKUs, aren't they? You sort of they've got a focused one for older kids, and they've got 1 steps or legions or those ones that are like washing up liquid bottles.
Yes.
Everything for every price point.
It's
bot
true,
shots.
actually.
Bot shots. I loved bot shots. They're silly little things, but again, talking about the pub, I remember taking bot shots lockdown to a few of our meetups and playing the bot shots drinking game, drop it on its vehicle front, and if you can get it to flip and transform and land on its feet, everyone else takes a drink, but if you don't, you take a drink. I used to love bot shots, and even that little lockdown had a superb little head sculpt. I really loved those toys, all the ones I had.
There are people listening to this podcast now going, what pub is this?
What were they drinking?
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty much what everyone else who attended the pub thought.
Yeah, definitely.
We can't possibly do a show about gimmicks and not talk about the Unicron trilogy, because that really is the Skittles bag of Transformers, isn't it? Really, it's got literally everything. You've got minicons, combiners, cyber keys. There's a planet.
That's true.
They literally, it is the line of
gimmick.
Gimmicks. Yeah.
First ever Unicron toy.
It is.
But you're right, Unicron trilogy is a cool one for the old gimmicks. It was funny because I actually have a couple of the combiners from Superlink or Energon, but when you said combiners then, I was like, combiners? I kind of completely forgot about it, but you're right.
They're not executed especially well. They don't really have feet or hands, but...
We actually haven't spoken about combiners at all.
That's true. That's true.
In this entire episode, we haven't mentioned them.
Someone listening to this right now is just like sitting at home, just like, why are they not talking about combiners?
Yeah.
They've unsubscribed already.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like there was a whole line dedicated to the gimmick recently.
No, combiners are cool. Energon is cool. How's that?
Yeah, that's good, but it's Armada. Armada, isn't it, of the three? It's really you've got the minicons, you've got combiners in there. Energon's just a thing.
No, Energon's got loads of stuff, because Energon you've got combiners in, but like, as you say, I like them, those combiners, like a lot. I mean, they have their dubious qualities, let's say, but I do still kind of rate them. But then in Energon, you've also got the power link thing. Do you know what I mean? The two bots kind of coming together. That's pretty cool.
That is a really cool gimmick.
That is a cool gimmick. It's done better on some of them than others. Do you know what I mean? There are definitely some where you're like, this doesn't work as well. But overall, it's pretty cool. And then you've got stuff like Wing Saber and all of that kind of business. Actually, I would say the Energon Optimus Prime is just like a heavily gimmicky toy, but just really, really cool toy. That's got some fantastic gimmicks on it.
That is awesome. It does look like a sort of Power Rangers sort of character, doesn't it? It's got that kind of Megazord vibe to it with its futuristic little drone vehicles.
But it's still so satisfying, and the fact that it combines with Wing Saber, it combines with Omega Supreme, all of that is very, very cool.
I did see an interview with Aaron Archer, and he was actually talking about how, I think it's Energon originally, the combining gimmick, where two bots can combine, was meant to be the complete center of it, and they were all supposed to be able to do that. And I'm sure he was saying that it didn't pan out like that in the end, but that was the original intent of it.
It's funny because it's a sort of relatively recent thing for me to kind of pick some of those toys up, and I had in my head that it was much more of a thing for the line than actually it is, because it really is kind of select toys, isn't it, that can do it. It's not, you would think it would be, as you say, like a really kind of wide centric thing in the line, and it's not particularly, which is kind of why Energon is a bit of a weird one, because it's a bit of a mishmash of everything in a funny way, whereas Armada was very distinctly minicons, that was like, and then Galaxy Force or Cybertron, it's the keys, so, and that's kind of what they're both about, whereas Energon is kind of like, it's got sort of several gimmicks that all kind of make it up, I guess.
It is three fantastic toy lines. I do love them all. They've still got that quality of being toys. Like now, toys are a lot more sort of, I suppose the ones we look at, they're all made for, they've got adults in mind, but those toys are still, they've got that sort of 1987 Headmaster quality, like we're talking about, really thick plastic,
100%.
very chunky.
What was the one that we were talking about was brought to the pub, and I was properly impressed by that, and you posted a picture of it recently. Was it Landmine?
Yes, it was Landmine.
That was a beautiful figure.
Lovely toy. That's a toy that, if you, as I've discovered, talk about it online or post a picture, people just rave about it, honestly, and for good reason, because it's just great fun. But it's got a kind of creativity to it that you don't see necessarily all the time nowadays in Transformers. Do you know what I mean? At the risk of saying it, like, I love all the homages and stuff to G1. Do you know what I mean? But there is an element of like the Unicron trilogy being a time where they just went for it. Do you know what I mean? With like some really different concepts, some completely new characters like Landmine, and just really had fun with it. And I think that there's a kind of unique quality to some of those toys that really kind of shines through. And Landmine is one of them. I've never seen anything else like that in Transformers. And I think that's really, really cool. And I think you get that same flavour from stuff like Beast Wars as well. Do you know what I mean? That is just so unique and of its time.
Well, that first, maybe it's not the first, but the main Optimus Primal toy from Beast Wars, it is a tremendous figure.
Yeah, exceptional toy. Absolutely exceptional. And again, really gimmick laden. It's got,
full of gimmicks,
Oh, yeah, it's pop out cannons and things in his arm, the little mace weapon.
The mask.
The mask. Yeah, mutant masks, which was the gimmick at the time. That was a weird one. But yeah, it's absolutely full of gimmicks. But they made them real toys at the time. And obviously they're still toys now, of course they are. But it's just, I don't know, as Liam said, they kind of had a sort of playable quality with them, I think. That the modern toys, it's more about articulation and stuff as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Whereas you've still got like, I go around to Emily's nephews when lockdown, in the sort of before times then, and I bought him you remember the giant Supreme class sort of a Cybertron Starscream?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
And
wow, yeah.
he's still got it because it's like an undestroyable toy.
Yeah.
So like, it had like Transformers Prime figures, all the legs and arms, they've all come off. They're all over the place. But that toy, that would just survive.
Yeah, it's an incredible kind of time of design. What I find funny now is when you see people really dissing like Armada toys, for example, and saying, how terrible the articulation is. It seems to be like a common thing that people haven't let go of. It's a bit the same for me as like Action Masters. You know how you cannot mention Action Masters online without someone who probably hasn't even thought of Action Masters in 30 years piping up and going, God, they're terrible because they don't transform. And it's a bit like, okay, yeah, cool. But it's kind of the same with Armada, that you can't mention Armada without someone going, oh, well, the articulation is rubbish. And it's like...
Because they miss the point, don't they?
Yeah.
They're toys to be played with, and they're supposed to just be fun.
I agree. I don't know. I suppose I was surprised coming back to Armada and looking at some of them and picking them up. And yes, some of them are... Actually, some of them have decent articulation, but that's by the by. Bendy Prime. But even the ones that, even like Megatron, for example, Armada Megatron, all right, the legs don't bend forward. But other than that, the arms are quite articulated and whatever else. But even then, I don't ever recall looking at that toy and thinking, oh, it really struggles because it doesn't have leg articulation. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't need it necessarily.
Unlike Ultra Magnus, I can remember getting that toy and being I remember loving the vehicle mode and being very disappointed with the robot mode because it just felt... He's got great wacky inflatable arms. He's got that kind of going on, but the legs it's just this very long, inarticulate toy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is a bit. I'll give you that one.
It is a gimmick that we don't talk about a lot in Transformers. Sound chips, but like, when it's done right, it can be super cool. For example, the LG Fortress Maximus that okay, it said a lot of phrases, but it also played the Headmaster's theme tune, which was wonderful. And G1 toys with their laser sounds and animated Ultra Magnus. In fact, some of the animated toys had really cool sound chips that would change depending on if you put the big pink Headmaster on the leader class bulkhead. So they had some really cool sound chips, and the Megatron from that line is just fabulous with its evil laugh.
Yeah, I guess I never really think about sound chips and all of that malarkey. You're right, the LG Fortress Maximus, that is a real special thing. I remember playing it, when it like transforming the Cerebos and that, and my wife just being like, "What on earth?" But
it makes the transformation sound as well, doesn't it? That's one of the sounds it makes.
It does, yeah. Along with a lot of shouting and all kinds.
Yes.
A lot of Japanese.
I still
shouting.
haven't put batteries in the anime Galvatron reissue. I'm still looking forward to doing that.
Yeah. I guess sound chips for me are one that like are fun at the time. I have actually, funnily enough, I then also have a distinct memory of G1 Galvatron. That noise of that gun is just forever ingrained. That kind of like
burned into your mind. Yeah.
Forever ingrained in my brain.
I can feel my ears piercing right now.
Yeah, oh god. But I remember running around the house with that thing as a kid, and my mum just being like, "Will you turn it off?" And me being like, "You bought it." Do you know what I mean?
Did you ever used to put the switch in between two sounds to get like the combined sound of the two? That was brilliant.
You could do that.
Secretly had like 5 modes.
Yeah. That was just a brilliant toy and so noisy. But yeah, these days sound gimmicks less of a thing for me, if I'm honest. But yeah, still fun.
Because Takara started including them in some of the masterpieces, didn't they? Was it the MP? Is it 44 Optimus Prime? Does he have?
Yeah, he does. He does. I've never used it. But yes, he does. But I think that's a weird one because a lot of people are unhappy about that because, of course, with that toy, it then has quite a sizable backpack to kind of house the sound chip and everything else. And a lot of people, probably including myself, would have been happy to see less of a backpack and no sound gimmick. So, but I think Takara have put sound gimmicks in a lot of kind of masterpiece toys and things like that, like with the stands and things like that for MP1 that they did and stuff like that. So they kind of keep coming back to it as a thing, I guess. But
is that the one with the? I've still got that one. It's got the fake Optimus Prime voice, but it's the person impersonating Peter Cullen doing the lines from the films.
Oh my God, you're right. I hadn't thought about that in ages actually. But yes, it does have there's the Hasbro release that they did of it with the kind of fake the fake Peter Cullen, as it were. Yes, it's absolutely hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
It's like, one shall stand, like that.
Yeah. It's they're reading lines from the film, but it is just it is unbelievably bad.
Here's one: light piping.
Ooh, Turbomasters.
Rotor Storm.
I hear light
screams
piping
in your face.
Yeah. I hear light piping. I think Turbomasters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the pinnacle, isn't it? Really.
Bright pink, bright pink neon light piping was and when it's done well, it really adds to the toy.
Yeah, I would agree.
And it's so criminally sad when you can see they want to light pipe a toy, but they've just painted over the bit that really would have made the difference, and it doesn't quite come through.
Yeah, poor light piping is just awful, isn't it? It's like someone's weeding your cornflakes, really, because it's just just so disappointing. It's kind of like it could have been good, and you've made a mess of it. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as big a leap from having milk in your cereal to having urine as it is from having good light piping to bad piping.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, I'd be equally disappointed with either.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I was going to say, well, what kind of fan are you?
Not a true fan.
If you don't get as outraged about these things as that, then, are you a true Transformers collector?
Well, I can distinctly remember the first bad light pipe toy I had. I did immediately relate it to that time I had urine in my cereal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you said it.
So if that's... Go on.
Can I just say that if I don't see an angry post from Maz on Twitter about bad light piping later, I will not consider him a real fan.
I think that's fair. Absolutely
We need
fair.
the outrage. Unless you have internet outrage, Maz, you're not real. Not a real fan.
Actually, does this count as a gimmick? Base modes. Do you think that counts as a gimmick? Or is that just a mode that a toy has?
That's a good one. That's a tough one. I guess it kind of is.
I love a good base mode.
Do you?
It's part of the theme, isn't it? It's definitely a gimmick.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity for creativity. I mean, not just in play, and also just to bring out other toys and involve them directly with a really cool base mode. But also I remember doing toy photography and absolutely going mad with toys that had base modes, and you could just you've seen Ticknat's collection of Autobot base modes all lined up, and it's really
cool.
Quite a sight.
That's cool. I'm going to lay it on the line though. I'm gonna give you the real Sixo T. Here you go.
The hot take.
The hot take. Are you ready for this? I think base modes kind of suck. It's true. I said it.
So Maz, are we starting our own podcast without?
Yeah, double do-over.
I just think that they're kind of a bit naff at times. Like, they can be good. You know what? There are some fantastic ones. Of course there are. Micromasters typically have fantastic base modes. Like, Countdown is exceptional. No question. And,
Skystalker also has a pretty cool base mode.
Skystalker is amazing.
Open out the shuttle. But yes, okay.
It's amazing.
I get your point about the big guys lying down first.
Right. So there are some... That's my point, is that... Okay, not all base modes are bad. There are some amazing examples. And when they're done well... Overlord is incredible. Overlord is incredible. There are some exceptional ones, but there are some real doozies as well. I mean, I like Power Master Optimus Prime. I will give you that. That's a good one. And I like Fort Max. I like a lot of the G1 ones, actually.
So what you're basically saying is that some of them aren't good, but some of them are. But as an actual gimmick, like when it's done well, it is pleasing and it brings something extra to a figure.
But I feel like it's done badly more often than it's done well.
It's when it's a convenience, isn't it? Like some of the Titans Return ones, like Soundwave, they didn't feel... I don't know, never felt finished or polished. It's just kind of like it.
I really like that base mode. I had a lot of fun photographing that one. I thought it was great. Yeah, especially as it had this sort of like fold down tape door that was clear and kind of had a little seat in it. I actually really like that.
See, I'm a bit burned by, and I like the toy overall, but Legends Fortress Maximus, the base modes are rubbish. Frankly,
you had to go fan mode with that one.
Yeah,
and there were some beautiful fan modes.
Yeah, but
that's really, really good ones.
That's kind of... Does that count? I don't know.
Well, if you think about base modes being the sort of seed of imagination for play, then yeah, I think it's very much. I'd rather they give us a rubbish one on the box in the instructions, and I can make a better one with my imagination.
That's fair. I'll give you that. That's a good point. That's a good point. I don't know. It amazed me. I suppose that was the first time I remember seeing a toy like that. And again, I love the robot mode on LG Fort Max. Do you know what I mean? I think it's really, really good. Or Titan's Return Fort Max, whichever one you want. But I just remember being surprised that neither of the alt modes measured up in any way, shape, or form to the original Fort Max toy. Do you know what I mean? It was just kind of like a... Sure. Oh man, I'm doing it again where I'm like, the original toys are so much better, man. And,
Sixo the dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly. G1. Yeah, I'm gonna be that guy like the whole episode, and I'm like kicking myself for it because I don't want to be that guy. Do you know what I mean? There are plenty of examples where I think the new stuff is better. I just seem to be hitting on a bit of a vein of like every example where the counter is kind of true.
The subject here is gimmicks, and maybe just what you're feeling is the original takes on gimmicks.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe they just worked out better because maybe they were being done for the first time, and maybe that's worth exploring. Because okay, here's another example actually, and this is more pertinent, and this is proving that it's not just about G1 being the best. Like, so the minicons that we were talking about before, the new Fans Hobby toy that they've done of Armada Prime is great. It's a really, really good toy. I reviewed it and I liked it a lot. The little minicon that they've done is kind of average. Like, it's got the same problem as what you were saying about Micromasters, Liam, in that it's just too fiddly. You can't transform the thing without legs popping off. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, like the original was right there. Do you know what I mean? You didn't really have to do much with it to kind of, necessarily improve on it. But they've if anything, they've just over-engineered it a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So maybe it is just that it's hard to when they get it right first time, it's hard to kind of redo that, I guess, or kind of make it better.
Can I just say, as the one member of this team who has not owned a vintage Fortress Maximus, I can confirm that the Titan's Return one is terrible and one of the most disappointing toys I've ever bought.
Wow.
Oh, that's harsh.
That's laying it on the line.
I've never owned a vintage Fort Max, and I've only just got the G1 Fort Max in the last 6 months. But the Titan's Fort Max was the first toy of that size I ever owned, and apart from the slightly floppy legs, I really liked it. I had three of the bastards.
Oh wow! So I like the head. That was cool.
Yeah, the Cerebros was brilliant. It was a really nice toy.
Yeah, but it felt like it stopped, and I think it's because I've also got Metroplex, and so it's the same toy, just sort of spun round in places. And
of course,
Metroplex is a very weird toy, and like the base mode is not very good. And it's not the case that it's not like you're not being old and saying, oh, it's not as good as the vintage toy, but it isn't, because they cut so many corners, and that sort of carries across to Fort Max, and it's like it's got a city mode that's not really a city, is it? It's just a sort of in-between.
It's a folded up man.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Unlike so many other Transformers, right?
With a very apologetic ramp.
That's kind of my thing. That's my thing about base modes.
Apologetic ramp.
Brilliant. But that's my thing about base modes, is that they're very often just folded up men, and that's the bit where I'm kind of like.
Well, what about Beast Wars being mostly a man in a pig or whatever it is, just dressed in an animal?
That's the selling point. Man in a pig. That's the selling point of Beast Wars. People signed up for Man in Pig.
People vote for Men in Pig.
I'm sure David Cameron was a huge fan of it.
I am here for that joke.
That's where we were both going.
Yeah, everyone was thinking it. I just said it. But that's what people wanted from Beast Wars. They knew it was,
Stop saying beast now.
Beast. Beast. Yeah.
A different kind of beast mode.
Oh dear. It's unfortunate. But no, people knew it was, robot and animal costume. That was what it said on the tin. Whereas
still can't take it seriously yet. I'm not there yet.
I love Beast Wars.
The cartoon was hugely entertaining. I mean,
it's great. Panpipes.
Yeah. Rock guitar.
What's not to love?
Definitely like the toys. I'm not so much of a fan of the cartoon, but I do.
Yeah, you don't like it, do you? You don't like. You would have preferred more kind of realistic looking animals.
Yeah, just something a bit. I think it's because it's a little bit goofy, isn't it? And I know we say that the G1 cartoon is very similar in that way, but it's just I come from a very much a Jurassic Park sort of background with this, but I'd much like Megatron to look like that kind of T-Rex, something more savage and sort of I don't know, beastie,
like he does in Kingdom.
Yeah.
There you go. So they've got round to it eventually.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that we've saved the very best gimmick for last.
Ooh.
And that is rub signs.
Ah.
See, I was going to ask whether we considered stickers a gimmick, but rub signs is way better.
I know a lot of collectors who don't like rub signs, and they go out of their way to collect pre-rub examples. I like pre-rubs for a whole different reason, in that they're the first release toys, and I love what they're like just as the first line of Transformers, but I have always absolutely adored rub signs. Love signs?
Love signs. Rub signs.
Yeah. I love the way G1 toys look with rub signs, and I agree that some of them are really badly placed, but the G1 tracks, for example, I really dislike the look of the G1 tracks with an Autobot sticker on his hood and chest. I just think it looks so much better with the rub sign square.
Yeah, I'd hold with that. I do. I will say that there are examples that I prefer without rub signs, like Bumblebee, for example, or any of the the
mini bots. I'm with you there on the mini bots.
Mini bots. Yeah, they're just too big. The rub signs often they're not so much on Bumblebee, but like on Huffer or Gears or whatever. They're just a bit unfortunately placed sometimes.
Yeah. And what it takes away from Bumblebee is that lovely contrast of mostly yellow with the red splash on his chest, and I think that takes away too much from his actual look and sacrifices it for the rub sign.
Yeah.
See, I think I'm going to be the opposite one there, because I'm a little bit sort of with G1. For me, it's like 85, 86, so the rub signs are all there. So when I see them without the rub signs, like the pre-rub versions, they don't look quite right. They always look like something's missing to me.
That's weird.
It's such a nostalgic part of the toys is the rub sign.
I think so for me too. Yeah. I mean, I can appreciate pre-rubs, but they're not any part of my nostalgia. It is the rub signs.
Of course, they were originally done for the mini spies, weren't they? Or kind of in tandem with the mini spies.
Yeah, mini spies are a lovely gimmick on their own as well.
We never got them here, did we?
No.
No, M.A.S.K bought them all.
I have so many. It's shocking, and I still haven't got a complete set. They're
all in Iceland now. Every mini spy is in Iceland.
50%
there
of
are
shipping
more mini
between
spies,
the US and Iceland was mini spies
in Iceland than people.
Yeah, that's
really
too
why
far
you
away.
were redoing your room, wasn't it, recently?
Just to make room for all the mini spies.
It's the museum of mini spies.
They are so cool. I mean, and I just can imagine going to the store in 1985 and having a mini bot, which is already cool, but then just getting a free mini spy with it, which is also another little transforming toy, which is motorized and has a rub sign, which is being introduced. And it's a really lovely thing to imagine you'd pick up for just a few dollars as well, just chump change. And they look so great on the cards as well. And unfortunately, so many of them have just succumbed to discoloration, but the motor still works. And yeah, I mean, they were available in the US for Transformers and also in Canada. And obviously in Japan, they were part of Takara's pre-Transformers line. But yeah, no, we didn't get mini spies over here. We got Throttlebots.
We did. And it's funny because you mentioned Throttlebots, and I'm actually kind of looking over at my shelves and stuff and just thinking, wow, so many gimmicks that we've not, had time so far to kind of mention. But
Monster Bots with the flint and the sparking. I mean, how great are those?
Impossible. Well, very difficult to find now, like still working. But yeah, what a great gimmick. Mad. But same as what are they called? The flame cons? What am I thinking of?
Yes,
they called the Firecons.
Firecons and Sparkerbots.
Sparkerbots, yeah.
Sorry, I was having a senior moment there just for a second. Just flame cons. But yeah, no, Firecons and Sparkerbots and all of that kind of malarkey. That's just a bit mad as well, isn't it?
Oh, punch, counterpunch. What a gimmick.
Ooh, nice.
Just super classy. Cassettes, guys.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Pretenders. What?
Pretenders.
We talked about
Pretenders.
and we all love them.
I love Pretenders. Pretenders is a hill I will die on. Definitely. I will go to bat for Pretenders.
And not just that first run of Pretenders, but also things like Road Grabber. Road Grabber's amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
beautiful colours. Lovely that you can put that sort of almost like heads-up display shield in vehicle mode and have the inner robot stand behind it. I love that toy.
I love it too. It's kind of mad that like the gimmick is man lies down in car, but it's still good. Do you know what I mean?
Man in a man. It's
yeah,
man in a man.
It is. There's a lot of that weird stuff. And I remember someone online that I think I posted a picture. I think it was Road Grabber or Gun Runner, one of them, and they were like, they'd obviously never seen it before, and they were like, hang on. So the gimmick is that this is a line of toys of robots that turn into cars, except this dude doesn't turn into a car. He just like gets in a car. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of it. And they were a bit like, I don't really get that. And I was like, no, but you just have to kind of go with it, don't you? Yep. It's just the beauty of Transformers. It looks cool. There you go. But yeah, no, I will defend Pretenders to the hilt. I think they're beautiful toys. Yes, the inner robots are, have their compromises or whatever, but I just think overall they are stunning toys. Beautiful to own as well now. Do you know what I mean? As vintage specimens or whatever.
But will you put the hats on?
No hats. No hats in this house.
I've learned about this recently when I started taking the hats off some of them and noticed that it was ripping the paint off.
Yep. Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Well, Sixo likes his Pretenders like himself with perfect hair.
No hats in this house.
No,
it's not got a
just
little rubber
scarves.
I actually wore a hat today, and my
Pretender scarf.
My wife said to me, "What is that on your head?" So there you go. That's how little I wear hats.
Did you introduce her to the Pretenders? And look at these guys.
Yeah. Just whipped them all out at the time. So yeah, she loves that stuff. No,
they actually display really well as well on shelves. I've got
they're great.
one shelf for the 5 Pretenders I have on display, and they just look really great together.
They make awesome displays. So colourful as well, and lovely paint and all of that. But I joking aside, I don't put the helmets on mine because, as Liam quite rightly says, it scuffs the paint, unfortunately. So.
And can I point out something that I had never noticed until it must have been a couple of months ago? Is I was actually looking at the back of the Pretenders and I was thinking, the backpacks, how far down they go. It's like they would not be able to move their legs. And it never occurred to me. Like,
they're bum bags.
Yeah, but they're sculpted into the back of the knees. It's like
they really are.
To move. It's really weird.
There's some weird anatomy. The bit that always gets me with Pretenders is the idea of it, of like, okay, so the Decepticons are giant monsters, which, I mean, are they fooling anyone at that point? Like, what's going on with that? I mean, really, does it make a lot of sense? Not really, but hey ho. And then the Autobots. Yeah, they do, of course. And then the Autobots.
Which one is Tom Selleck? One of them is Tom Selleck.
That's Stranglehold.
That's it.
That's a year 2 Pretender. Yeah, he's cool. Those are great. The originals I prefer actually to the smaller ones, but a bit like Headmasters. But there's another running theme for you, isn't it? But just continuing on there. But the obviously the human guys, the Autobots, it just opens up a whole kind of question of like, hang on, how big are these humans? Do you know what I mean? And it's really, really funny. In the comic, obviously, it gets more confusing because you get scenes like where Cloudburst transforms into his jet form, and then the shell rides in the cockpit of the jet form, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? How does this work? So, but I love that.
Do you know what's quite fantastic about the 3 original Autobot ones as well? It's like when you look at their faces, they're quite shrunk down, like they're wearing masks, almost like there's COVID.
Oh, not thought of that before. There you go.
Yeah, if you look, they're sort
of
sunken in. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, see you next month.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. End on that note.
There's an apologetic ramp for you.
Apologetic ramp. That's definitely my new favourite phrase. So what other gimmicks though have we not covered? Because obviously there are plenty that we have mentioned, but there must be more. So let's do a bit of a speed round, see what you can think of. Go on, Maz.
Well, I don't think we gave enough time to cassettes and, just Microman in general, 1-to-1 scale household objects, Well, not saying guns are household objects, but, you've got the cassette players, the cassettes themselves, binoculars that were in Microman, reflector, the camera, and then obviously the mini-bots were supposed to be like toy cars, little penny racers. That was just a really cool thing to start off the line with. And obviously it kind of gets lost in the whole Transformers cartoon bit and comic bit, but as a gimmick, that's pretty awesome. And that's why real gear stuff from the movies was actually pretty cool as well.
That bit about the penny racers actually them being intended to be toy cars originally is one of my favourite facts about Transformers.
It's a great revelation, isn't it?
Yeah. Just I remember, it's one of those things you say when you first learn it that you're just like, oh, okay, that kind of makes more sense then.
Yeah. And it's just such a cooler toy for it as well.
Yeah.
You just appreciate it on a slightly different level.
Yeah,
cassettes. I think cassettes are fantastic. Never had them as a kid. In fact, I had very few Microman-based toys as a kid. All of them were the cars and the jets all came from Diaclone, mostly what I coveted. But yeah, I think cassettes are super cool.
Yeah, I would hold with that. I remember getting a Soundwave for the first time. I talked about this in a video actually recently because I was doing a video on the Ocular Max cassettes and mentioned about this. But Soundwave. My late uncle, took me to the NEC Toy Fair when I was a teenager, and there for the first time I saw a Soundwave minted box and bought it and still have it, and it's still in great condition today, and I absolutely love it. Big. I mean, never had it as a kid, but big love for the cassettes and that whole gimmick. And I think I just remember handling, the buzzsaw and all of that, and just thinking this is absolutely terrific.
Yeah, they are great.
Definitely. So, any others then? Other gimmicks?
Yeah. What about M.A.K and M.A.K Alive and the Automorphs? So if you remember in the movies, they had all those little gear-based bits where heads popped out, or sort of weapons that folded out of arms and things like that.
That's a cool one.
Speaking of movies, I love the Human Alliance line. I mean, that was obviously the gimmick was having a little, well, not so little, but a figurine that was quite good that could sit in the car and interact with it, and they had like little platforms on their shoulders where they'd sit there, and you could have Sam shooting a laser from Sideswipe's shoulder. But those Human Alliance toys, the large ones, were fantastic. I love that line.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I have the little Human Alliance Frenzy, which I think is a very cool little toy. Indeed. I'm gonna throw one out there, which we've only briefly alluded to, but Action Masters, which is not everybody's
fantastic choice.
Yeah, not everybody's favourite thing. It's one of those that some people hate it to this day, but I love them, absolutely love them, and I just think that I'm so pleased now to see Super 7 doing those, like Bonzotron and Bombshell. I really, really hope that they do more. Have you seen those, M.A.S.?
I have seen them, and I was just thinking recently I was handling...
Didn't know if that would be on your radar.
Well, I have Action Master Croc, and I just love the sculpting and the colouring on it. And I saw an...
Oh, because of your IDW...
Yeah, I had to get one to do that photo for More Than Meets the Eye 45. And I saw an auction recently for Treadshot, and I just thought it looks so cool. It's just as a figure, as a little sci-fi robot,
and it's
nicely painted,
based on a transforming toy.
Proportion. Yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah, actually is based on a transforming toy, not a transformer, but on a gun robo figure, which is really weird. Treadshot is a joy, definitely. But I really loved as well with Action Masters just some of those original characters like Treadshot, and then on the Autobots you've got like Jackpot and Rollout and Mainframe. And
Mainframe's cool. Rad.
Is cool. All those guys that you could tell. What I loved about them is that they clearly, whoever designed them, went, well, this is what it transforms into, and then it just doesn't. So it's. But I like that you can kind of tell that they have alt modes. That they're not just generic humanoid blocks. That they obviously kind of thought through it enough. Treadshot is amazing up close because you've got the gun barrel in his chest and all of that kind of stuff, and it's really, really very cool, very nicely done.
And who would have thought that if you get an Action Master Shockwave that's discoloured just enough, you've got yourself a Radio Shack grey Astro Magnum Action Master.
I really want one now. I'm so jealous of that.
It looked great, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. Really did look cool. That
would have been the first Shockwave, wouldn't it? That would have been released in the UK. We didn't get the purple one. We had obviously the various grey ones, sort of Tandy Wave, but we didn't have an actual purple Shockwave until Action Masters, would it?
I think that's probably fair.
That's probably true.
A Tandy Wave. I'd love a Tandy Wave, a good one.
I've got one.
Really nice to have that thing.
Do you have one?
Jealous.
I do. It was in. Do you remember that hall a long time ago? There was one in there.
fantastic.
Nice.
Anything else?
Well, we've not talked about Beast Wars much, but there were some great gimmicks in Beast Wars. Transmetals at Ace.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. I mean, the chrome is not really worth, it's beautiful, but it flakes off on a lot of them anyway. Not all of them, actually. Some of them are fine. It's really, really weird. And some of them can flake off in the box. Others can be fine for years. It's just pot luck, really, with some of them. But did you hear there's a rumor that they're going to reissue Transmetals?
I did.
Didn't know that, yeah.
Yeah. There's some talk about it at the moment that Hasbro might be considering reissuing some Beast Wars toys, specifically Transmetals. So that would be fun to see, because I think they're like a real, like for a lot of people anyway that grew up with Beast Wars, I think that's a real popular part of the franchise.
What about motorized Transformers? How do you feel about motorized Transformers? Omega Supreme, Trypticon, Skylynx.
Take it or leave it for me.
Those aren't the features that would ever sell you on those toys, are they?
No. It's not. Yeah. I was playing actually with Trypticon, my Trypticon reissue G1 with my son recently, and he loved it. But even he was kind of over it in about 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like, okay.
He's obviously never seen the famous Trypticon races at Dutchbot.
Yeah,
they used to run.
Well, that's probably when it's at its most entertaining, isn't it? Is those kind of silly things. Like, I had a great fun, doing my own little race and making a video of it, of like, I think it was Slicer and Star Convoy. Like I made a little video of it, and that was great fun. But that's kind of when those motorized gimmicks are the most fun for me, is just like racing one against the other, as opposed to actually like individually thinking, wow, isn't it cool that Skylynx can walk?
Well, it's the same with those pullback Transformers probably as well, Battle Chargers and even Mini Spies, that kind of thing.
The Jump Starters, yeah.
Jump Starters,
yeah.
Yeah, well, Throttlebots again.
Yeah. I do want to quickly mention again Power Masters, because I think we really did pass over those really quickly, and we kind of maybe left a sour taste by saying, they break if you don't insert the Power Master engine. But how good, as a subline, are Power Master Transformers as Transformers, sculpt-wise, look-wise, and just how good those toys are.
I agree.
Of, like, Overlord, Power Master Prime to Getaway, and the fantastic Slapdash and Double Dealer and the two Power Master Jet Decepticons, and that is a supremely good line of Transformers. But again, it's that line of, is it because the figure is really good, or is the gimmick making it a good toy? And I think it's more that the figures were just really good.
I agree. The gimmick itself is a weird one.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
Yeah, the gimmick is take it or leave it for me. I like the engine. I like the idea of them being engines, but I think they probably came up with the idea of like, okay, now this year the men will be engines, and someone went, well, how does that integrate? And they're like, like lock the transformation maybe. And I don't know. Like, and it's telling probably that when you get like modern redos of Power Master toys, like Fans Hobbies Overlord and stuff like that, that they don't do anything with it. They're just literally the engines plug in and don't do anything. And
it doesn't detract at all from.
No, it's fine. Do you know what I mean? Nobody's sitting there missing that their toy can't transform without putting.
Oh, I bet somebody is. I bet somebody is.
Somebody will be, sure. That one person
has not been catered to.
Yes, no doubt, writing angry letters. But it's for most people anyway, it's not a gimmick that you miss, is it, necessarily?
No.
I'm going to lay one on you that we've not mentioned yet. Well, we kind of have. We've kind of mentioned it, both bits of it, but we'd be absolutely awful if we didn't mention it at all, and that is Micromaster combiners.
Yeah, the 6 combiners.
Just terrific toys.
Yep. Everything about them's great. I love that little line of Transformers.
You're hunting for some now, right, Liam?
I am, and it's purely because of you two and Maz's love of Six-Wing. It's every time I see your photos of them, I'm like, I'm really sad that I don't have them.
They're terrific toys, honestly. All the joy of Micromasters, but all the fun of combiners as well. Yes. And it's just a wonderful package.
Great alt modes, just pure Transformers hitting every classic tick box that makes a toy a good Transformer. I mean, that combiner of 6 trains is wonderful.
6 train is a real standout, yeah, and 6 liner. That's really, really good. I really like, on stuff like 6 turbo, that then you get like the Fireman with the little fire cap and the policeman with the little police hat and things like that. It's really funny, but
that is cool.
It's just, I don't know, it's some of the sort of Japanese Transformers that just don't take themselves too seriously. Do you know what I mean? And they do it really, really well.
It's the real transition into Brave there, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely that flavour of going towards. And also, I love how the reissues of those toys improve so vastly upon the vintage ones. No stickers, tampos, and the colours they used on Decepticon Six-Wing versus the Autobot one is pure 1988 energy, isn't it? It's just everything about post-movie Decepticon that's right.
I mean, there's part of me that would be curious to kind of, I guess, own the originals, but I'm not feeling a burning need for it. You know, the reissues are so good.
Yeah, and they're so difficult to find without yellowing the originals. There were quite a lot more white toys in the original ones. Like Six-Wing had a lot of white parts. Six Builder, I think it's the right shoulder, has the crane that was all white. It's impossible to get that without yellowing now.
And so, as we were talking about earlier, I was just saying that the Micromasters covered pretty much everything.
Yeah.
There with the combiners, you had the combiners with the Pretender shells as well.
What? Which one? What?
It was... Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, like Dino King, Dino King.
Dino
King. Right, okay. For a minute, I was...
Isn't there?
Yeah, okay. I guess you could... Do you count that as
the combiner's tiny enough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
the combined form.
It's really, really small.
They're very small toys, aren't they?
For a minute, I was like thinking, what have I missed? Do you know what I mean? This amazing thing. But no, you're right. I guess, I guess there's a bit of debate about if they're legitimately Micromasters or not. Just like, some people consider Landcross to be a Micromaster set or not. Just
very small Transformers.
Just tiny,
not Micromaster small.
But guys.
They do it right though. The same reason G1 Micromasters are so appealing. It's like it's the perfect Transformers aesthetic, but tiny. Do you remember Sixo at TFN when I saw? I don't know if it was Bird Brain or which one it was.
I think
in
it was
robot
Bird Brain.
mode. On the Toy-Fu table, this tiny, perfect G1 Transformers robot, but tiny. And I thought, what is that? And
I remember. I remember your reaction.
Sold immediately, and I'm still trying to find a nice set. Just don't know if I can go down that route because of everything that comes with trying to get a nice Monstructor.
It's hard because the shells are a bugger as well. Honestly, they're just they kind of melt almost. You know what I mean? And they're oily and all of that. Do you know what I mean? Discoloration.
Great gimmick.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah. It's a bit they're,
oil.
Yeah, that kind of like oily, rubbery texture. They kind of got that going on. But it's a weird one, definitely. But they are lovely toys. I really, really like them for sure. I'm really pleased with my set, has to be said. But definitely hard to track down.
I think we've pretty much covered what there is to cover.
I think so. Yeah. I'm sure someone will right now be thinking of something that we've not mentioned.
There's going to be someone going, but they didn't talk about Transformers Prime or those disc launchers or something else.
Oh man, well there's just so much.
There's only so much you can fit in.
Yeah.
I should definitely give an honourable mention to Optimus Prime's trailer. I mean, how much mileage have I gotten out of Prime's trailer in the last few years in photography? Whether it's the G1 Prime or the Masterpiece Prime or the bootleg oversized Wei Jiang Masterpiece Optimus Prime trailer, it's a great piece of kit that has never stopped giving.
It is a good one. But yeah, I mean, ultimately we could be here, all night, and when would it end? You know what I mean? There's always going to be some gimmick or something. So, maybe if people are listening to this, don't judge us too harshly for not mentioning your favourite gimmick. Do you know what I mean? If you're a big fan of like Generation 2 Power Masters or something, do you know what I mean? Just like lay off a little bit. But yeah, it's just terrific, isn't it? And of course, one thing that we didn't say, but a few people did mention on Twitter, was that, of course, the greatest gimmick really is transformation.
And there's nowhere else to go after that.
Yeah, that's the end of it there, isn't it? That's just, okay, that's it, yeah. So, okay, well, it's been fun.
It's been a real pleasure, lads.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for joining us for this first episode of Triple Takeover in our discussion about gimmicks in the Transformers line. Sixo, Liam, why don't you tell us where we can find your stuff if anyone wants to follow you on social?
Go on, Liam.
I can be found anywhere there is an @ followed by Toybox Soapbox.
Oh, there you go. I'm Sixo, so I'm on, same. I'm Sixo TF on Twitter, Facebook, all of that kind of clobber. You can find me on YouTube as well, youtube.com/SixoTF.
You can find me on TFsquareone on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Thanks for joining, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. If there's any gimmick that you feel we didn't mention in the episode, feel free to, send us a message on social and tell us what your favorite gimmick is if we didn't bring it up. Was it a Predator Jet? Was it the Super Sight? Be in touch. Until next time.